If you're sick of Donald Trump, you're not alone. And yes, I know all the Democrats are sick of Trump. But Democrats aren't the only ones getting exceedingly tired of Trump. Republicans are too. And I'm not talking about Republican politicians who are endorsing Harris because they recognize what a threat to democracy Trump is. I'm not talking about conservative leaders who recognize that the Republican Party under Trump is not about conservative values. It's about Trump. No, what I'm talking about is everyday Republican voters who are tired of Trump, his antics, his name calling, but most of all, his whining. Two former Republican operatives, one a campaign strategist and the other a pollster, are both pointing to voter exhaustion over Trump and how it spells disaster for Trump in November. Let's take a look.
At the heart of this, it just goes back to this fundamental hollowness about Republican policy. What is the bargain that Republicans, not just Trump, Republicans are striking with voters? What do you get when you vote Republican? And that's the thing that I just look at this and scratch my head. What is it that is the positive you get? Now, Trump lost by 7 million votes. He needs new customers. What is he doing to attract new customers? I don't see any program, any policy, any vision that is doing that. And that's why he seems sort of stuck at this 46 level. He won with 46.2%. Romney lost with 47.2%. And even when it was versus Biden after that bad debate, he still had trouble moving north of 47%. And I think that's what you're seeing now, where he's just stuck at that and doesn't know what to do to get out of it. But I think the more likely scenario is that this race is going to be close till maybe October 20th, 25th. And then I just think that the bottom's going to start to drop out for Trump because he's just not acquiring new voters. I mean, this is what happened to Carter in 80. And I think there's a lot of similarities here. Ultimately, politics has to be about addition. So what is he doing to attract these new voters? And I can promise you this effort to try to get African-American votes, in 64, Goldwater got 7%. In 20, Trump got 8%. That's 1 point every 56 years. He's not going to get north of 9% of the African-American vote. When you look at any of these polls that show otherwise, you should just factor that in, and it's going to prove that Harris and Walz are doing better than these numbers indicate.
But even more than Donald Trump not being able to make any inroads is the fact that Trump is losing his base.
And we've seen a tremendous openness to voting for Kamala Harris. People are interested. They want to hear more about what she stands for. They want to learn more. Many of them don't know that much about her, even though she was the vice president of the United States. And so they're getting to meet her for the first time. And so what we're doing is taking Republican voices, Trump voting voices, and elevating them so that is a signal, basically, as a permission structure for other Republican voters who are Kamala curious to say, you know what, just because I voted for Trump or just because I identify as a Republican, I'm interested in voting for Kamala Harris. And I'm going to do it because Donald Trump either presents such a threat or, I'll tell you, actually what we hear from a lot of these voters more than anything else is people are bored by Trump. They're bored with all of the drama. They're tired of the insults. They're tired of the lies about the election. They want to know what is somebody going to do for them. They want to know how they're going to handle the economy, handle inflation, and they're interested in a new pitch. And that's what Kamala Harris has for them.
Yeah, Sarah, I'd add the word exhausted. So many Republicans are using that word, too, to describe Trump. So one of the major flaws with polling in recent cycles is there seems to be an undercount of Trump supporters. In part, people theorize because some are unwilling to admit to a pollster like, hey, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. But do you think this time around we might have the opposite effect, where there may be some Republicans who might not be willing to acknowledge to a pollster or to friends and family, like, you know what, I'm not going to vote Republican this time around. I'm going to vote for the Democratic nominee. But then actually when it comes to the ballot box, the privacy of the ballot box, push the button for Harris.
Yeah, and I think this is especially true of sort of working class women, where you'd be surprised how many of them are thinking about this race in sort of an entirely new frame. They like Kamala Harris. I mean, we're seeing with sort of non-college, white working class women, a real openness to her. Now, some of it has to do with abortion as an issue, but a lot of it is that they just feel like she's for them is something that we say, that she seems normal. They like the choice of Tim Walz as the vice president.
Trump voters are starting to realize that Trump is about Trump and Trump only. He seemed like a disruptor in 2016, and voters thought that anger and disruption was a representation of their anger, of their frustration with a political class that fails to deliver for them year in and year out. Well, it's 8 years later, and they are starting to realize Trump's anger and whining is all about him. It's always been about him. It always will be about him, and it will never be about them. Millionaires and billionaires maybe, but never about them. So yes, it looks like the bottom is going to fall out, but far from being able to coast, it means Democrats have to work even harder to make sure that we win the House and Senate, that we take advantage of the fallout. Because if we really want to defeat Trumpism, to put it away for good, we need a blue tsunami. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.